What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to talk about Edward Newgate. You see, ladies and gentlemen, OPO3 is now legal, and they had the One Piece Championship 2022 finals very recently over in Japan, and the winning deck was Edward Newgate. And the second place deck was a very, very, very similar looking Edward Newgate. When we had the OPO2 meta, it was pretty clear over in Japan that the best deck was Roanoa Zoro. The Roanoa Zoro from OPO2, that was very much what was running around. That wasn't the only viable deck, don't get me wrong. There were plenty of other decks that were doing a bunch of winning, but I do think it is fair to say that Roanoa Zoro was the best deck. I think that's a fair comment to make. Well, that's not the case anymore, ladies and gentlemen. Red is still the best colour, and red, certainly in the early days of the One Piece TCG, red is clearly taken over here. Make no mistake about it, Edward Newgate is the best deck. It's still red, but it's now Edward Newgate, and I do think this seems pretty clear to me, honestly, ladies and gentlemen. This seems pretty clear. So we start off with the leader, Edward Newgate, and there are two things that should stand out very, very quickly. Number one, this is the biggest leader we've seen so far, because it's got 6,000 power, and it's got 6 life. They're the two things, right? 6,000 power, most we've seen on any leader. 6 life, most we've seen on any leader. Both huge advantages. But at the end of your turn, you have to add a card from the top of your life to your hand. This does give you a card advantage, which is wonderful. Means you get to basically draw an extra card at the end of your turn. Yay! But it also means that your opponent has they have a little bit of an advantage because your life is going to whittle down at the end of every turn. They don't have to take all of your life to actually win. So the goal with Edward Newgate is very simple. Fast, aggressive, and try not to give up any extra life that you don't have to, because you're losing one every turn regardless. Good, good. And what we've basically got here is a whole bunch of one-cost cards to start with. So you've got the Izzo from OPO3. There's not a billion cards from OPO3 in this particular list, but Izzo is absolutely one of them. This is one of the new cards that makes a big difference. One cost 2,000 power. On play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Reveal a card with Whitebeard Pirates in its type other than Izzo and add it to your hand. So yeah, this is something we see all the time. We see these kind of cards seeing a huge amount of play. It's a little bit of search. That makes perfect sense. Okay, we see these all over. We've got the Atama from Romance Dawn on play. It's a one-cost card. Give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power during this turn. And it gives counter plus 2,000. So you've got the combination there of a very nice counter, and you need some counter plus 2,000, and the fact that you can minus one of your opponent's characters 2,000 power, which goes back to what I was saying a minute ago, whereby you do not give up any life with this deck that you can avoid, because frankly, you don't have a lot of life to spare. You need to be a little bit careful. Now, we've also got the one-cost Makino from OPO2. Again, we got counter plus 2,000. That is important, because again, fast, aggressive. You haven't got a huge amount of time with this deck before your opponent can get a couple attacks and win. You want to be going as fast and aggressive as possible in the early game. So having extra counter plus 2,000 is good. Activate main, you may rest this character up to one of your red characters of a cost of 1, gains 3,000 power during this turn. So it's a way of taking those one-cost characters that, frankly, are generally not very good attackers, and making them, hopefully at least, into viable attackers. That's your goal here, and it's a pretty good goal, quite frankly. And that's it in terms of the one-cost characters. But that is quite a few to be getting on with, if I'm honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. That is quite a few one-cost characters to be getting on with. That's 12 cards in your deck. That's like a quarter of your deck. Right off the bat, that's pretty good. Now, we do have a 2-cost Sanji here. This is the one from Romance Dawn. Again, we've got counter plus 2,000. you might be seeing a theme here. And activate main once per turn, take a life and put it into your hand. And this turn, you get 2,000 power for this character and give it to Rested Dawn. Now again, you're giving up another life here, which is obviously not what you want to be doing all the time, but it's a 3,000 power character. You gain 2,000 power, and you give it to Rested Dawn, which incidentally could be the 2 Dawn that you use to pay for Sanji, and all of a sudden, you've basically got a 2-cost, 7,000 power character. Pay 2, and this could be, play it 1 turn, attack with it the next. Get 2,000 power, get 2 Rested Dawn, you're a 7,000 power character. That is, well, I said about being fast and aggressive. This is pretty gosh darn fast and pretty gosh darn aggressive. Now moving up to 4-cost characters here, we've got a playset of Jozu. Again, counter plus 2,000. Like I said, this is not a coincidence. There is a very good reason you got to counter plus 2,000. 2 things you want to be doing with Edward Newgate is fast and aggressive, and your 6,000 power leader helps with that, and not giving up life that you don't have to give up. And certainly you're going to be at 0 life, after 6 turns, guaranteed. So you need to be able to stop that final attack. Having lots of counter plus 2,000 helps you out beautifully. But this is also a character that does Don X1. If you have 2 or less life, and your leader's type includes Whitebeard Pirates, this character gains Rush. Well, bearing in mind your leader does have Whitebeard Pirates, and as I've told you, you are going to be giving up a lot of life, 1 every turn at least. You're going to go down to 2 life pretty quickly with this deck. So then you got yourself a nice Rusher. Yeah, that sounds pretty gosh darn good to me. And then we've got ourselves a vanilla character. We've got Atmos. 4 cost, 6,000 power, counter plus 1,000. Why? Numbers, basically. Starting off at 6,000 power. Now remember that when you're attacking, the tie goes to the attacker. So basically what this says is your opponent has to use a 2,000 counter to stop the attack of this character going through. That is the absolute bare minimum. That is the least they have to do in order to stop this attack going through. Which means you start putting a bit of Don on there, beefing up the power a little bit, and these attacks are going to go through. No, it's not exciting, but it is good. Now, Marco is... Oh, also, it's a Whitebeard Pirates type, which means it is easily searched out. And like I've said, that is the kind of thing. This is a deck you don't really want to be hanging around with here. So having one of these that can be searched out in the early game with your Izzo here, clearly a very important thing indeed. The typing here is very important. Because like I say, if you couldn't search it out of Izzo, wouldn't be nearly as good. Now, we got Marco coming in here. 4 cost, 5,000 power with Blocker. We've got a bunch of 2,000 counter, but Blocker coming in here as well. Pretty important. And on KO, you may trash 1 card from your hand with Whitebeard Pirates in its type. And if you have 2 or fewer life cards, play this character from your trash rested. So it's a blocker that comes back. And again, you'll notice there is basically all Whitebeard Pirates cards in this deck. Like, we're just going Whitebeard Pirates out. No, not all Whitebeard Pirates. Atama isn't. But there's a lot of Whitebeard Pirates in this deck. And that means that you're going to have a blocker which keeps coming back. So you're not going to be giving up that life, which is a very, very important thing indeed. But that's not the only Marco we're rolling with here. We've also got the new Marco from OPO3. This is one of the other new cards from Mighty Enemy, which is really helping to make this deck, well, next level. A lot of good cards. Not that many from OPO3, but there are a few. And that's making a difference. 5 cost, 6,000 power, counter plus 1,000. On play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters of 3,000 power or less. Often a small blocker to allow your attacks to go through. And on KO, you may trash 1 event card from your hand to play this character from your trash rested. But bearing in mind, it's got a play skill, which says you can KO a 3,000 power character. So you get to just keep doing it, ladies and gentlemen. You just get to keep doing it. Also, check the wording. It says on play, but it also says your turn. Yeah. This takes a lot of characters out and keeps coming back from the trash, just like the other Marco. This is a very good thing. Now, in terms of big boys here, in terms of your big characters, we've got ourselves the super rare Ace from OPO2. 7 cost 7,000 power. No counter, unfortunately. But on play, give up to 2 of your opponent's characters minus 3,000 power for the turn. Again, very important to try and get attacks through. And then if your leader has Whitebeard Pirates in its types, this character gains Rush during this turn. Oh look, it's another character with Rush. I told you that this was a deck where you really wanted to be trying to go fast and aggressive. Because you're losing that life every turn, you need to be very conscious of that. Well, wonderful news, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to help you out massively. And then, obviously, we need to play Edward Newgate, don't we? We've got to play a bit of Edward Newgate, the big character Edward Newgate. And we've got an English scan of this, which makes me happy. 9 cost 10,000 power is huge. But on play, up to 1 of your leader gains 2,000 power until the start of your next turn. That means you've got 8,000 power. And because it's the start of your next turn, it means when you're attacking this turn and when your opponent is trying to get attacks through the following turn, because pretty quickly in this deck, you're going to end up with no life remaining. So what you need to do is make sure that that one attack of your opponent's doesn't go through. When you've got no life, you need to stop every attack. And having all the counter plus 2,000 combined with what is going to be an 8,000 power leader that they've got to get through, that is going to make it very difficult for that last attack to go through. Even when you're down to no life, that last attack is not going to be easy. That's the point of this deck. And then after that, you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effects during this turn. Which is kind of big, frankly, ladies and gentlemen. That's kind of big. Because if you can't add life cards to your hand, you can't use that leader effect that adds a life card to your hand, because it says you cannot add life cards to your hand. Yeah. Funny how that works, isn't it? There's a reason you play a play set of these. Essentially, when this is on board, you want to be playing one of these every turn if you can. And then Don X2, when attacking, KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters to 3,000 power or less. Between this and Marco, your opponent's small characters will not be able to stay on the board. And I'm hoping at this stage you're starting to see, like, hang on a second, this deck seems a little bit broken. There seems to be a lot of ridiculous things going on with this deck, and yes, there are a lot of ridiculous things that are going on with this deck. There is a reason it got first and second at the championships. It's not a coincidence. It is that gosh darn good. Now, in terms of event cards here, we do actually have a bunch, but remember, stuff like Marco really want them as well. Whitebeard Pirates is a 1-cost card. Look at the 5 cards on the top of your deck. Reveal up to 1 card with Whitebeard Pirates in its type and put it in your hand. And it does the same thing as a trigger. It searches, just like Izzo searches. Yeah. You want to be getting all your cards, like I've said. Once the Edward Newgate is on board, once you've got enough Don, when you got the 9 Don, you kind of want to be playing it every turn. So you need to be finding it every turn. Cards like this will absolutely help. We've also got ourselves a full playset coming in here of Radical Beam. 1 cost, counter. Your leader or up to 1 of your characters gains 2,000 power for the battle. Then if you have 2 or fewer life cards, that card gains an additional 2,000 power during this battle. Bearing in mind, of course, that that's going to happen pretty quickly. Yeah. As a trigger, you get an extra 1,000 power on leader or character. It's fine. But really, this is one where you want the main effect more than that. We've got a couple copies of Guard Point from Starter Deck 1. Your leader or 1 of your characters gains 3,000 power. Or 1,000 power as a trigger. But again, you need to stop those later attacks going through. These cards, combined with all your 2,000 counter, are absolutely going to do that. And then we finish off with a playset of a 2-cost event card. I know. We're beefing it up a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. We are beefing it up a little bit. Except it's not actually an event card. It's a stage card. I know. So Roger a little with that one. Sorry. But we do have a stage card coming in here as well, which is pretty gosh darn important, honestly. It's a 2-cost card. It's Moby Dick. On your turn, if you have 1 or fewer life cards, your Edward Newgate and all your characters with Whitebeard Pirates in its type gain 2,000 power. Again, you are going to be running out of life cards here pretty quickly. That is kind of how the deck works. Once you're down to 1 life card, you should have the stage in play, at which point you've got an 8,000 power leader. Plus you've got all of the event cards I've told you about. Plus you've got all of the 2,000 power counter I've told you about. Plus you've got the Edward Newgate that gives you an extra 2,000 power, makes you up to a 10,000 power leader. And you end up in the late game where, yeah, you're going to have like very little life remaining after a few turns. But getting that last attack past Edward Newgate is extremely difficult. And at the same time, you've got this deck with big, powerful characters, bunch of rushes, etc. Yeah, that's pretty important. There is a reason this is the best deck. There is a reason it came first and second. And there might not be that many cards from OPO3 that we've added in. I mean, you've basically got Marco and Izzo. They're the only 2 cards from OPO3 that we've actually added in here. But actually, they're kind of a big deal. We've got a card that can search out your Whitebeard Pirates, which is absolutely huge and gives so much more consistency to the deck. And then we've got a card which is constantly taking out 3,000 power characters and coming back from the trash. Yeah, make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the best deck right now. And honestly, in the OPO3 meta as it stands, there really isn't much of a counter argument here. The good news is, it doesn't play the Rush Roanoa Zorro, so maybe the price of that's going to start coming down. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know all your opinions. I want to know anything you want to tell me. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, have a chat with us, all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.